those of you who've attended the cuff training, this is a little less formal than what we might have in some of the classes. But I think going from the cuff class this morning to this, you're going to go, I knew that. I knew that. Is it tough enough or is cuff too rough? You might not think so because you actually came to the class this morning, and we tend to offer the classes quarterly. So look out for our next cuff forum. So without a whole lot of ado, before we get started, we do have the room chat where you can put your questions, and we'll have time for a Q&A. That's we expect a lot of questions moving forward at the end of our just real quick webcast here with Melinda and Richard. But just to let you know, CalPCA, we're the California Procurement and Contracting Academy. And for further direction, we do recommend that you also contact the Purchasing Authority Unit for if you need some answers in writing outside of what we can provide in today's class. So I'm going to go ahead and flip it over to both Melinda and Richard. So thanks everybody for being here for our third installment of Fiduciary Forum. Thanks.
Well, thank you, Lori. Welcome, everyone, to the Fiduciary Forum. We're going to be having some music going on in our next episode. But in this episode, we are going to be talking about cuff again. Are you tough enough or cuff too rough? And basically, what I want to know, do you understand, give me a show of hands, what is the purpose of cuff? What is the purpose of cuff? Do you understand it, or put something in the text in the chat bubble? Do you understand what cuff is all about and the reasoning for it? Whoops.
Well, I can tell you it's not the cuff of my pants, and it's not the second half of a handcuff.
Exactly. You're exactly right. I mean, to make sure suppliers are not passed through and they provide a function. You know, it's important, you know, especially during these days, that our cuff is used for our small businesses and DVBEs, you know, not using them as a pass through. And that happens all the time. So we are responsible to do a cuff for every one of our contracts, small business DVBE. It is very important. And Melinda, you might want to chime in. Okay, and that's okay. Go ahead.
Yeah, I'm here. Yeah, I wasn't sure if you were done with your thought, but no, I can chime in whenever you need me to. So the purpose of cuff is, yes, to make sure that there's no pass-throughs or no fronts, but we also want to make sure that the small business and DVB communities are actually being justified and verified for those participation amounts that we claim annually for our contracts, and that they are given the correct preference or incentive amounts during the evaluation process, because we want them to be on winning contracts. So we're going to, afford anything that we can to them, and cuff ensures small business and DVB preferences and incentives.
That's exactly right. And carry out the obligation by actually performing and managing and supervising the work. We want our small business to get what they deserve. Okay, that's what the cuff is for, you know, because we have so many situations where a business want to get the business from the state, and during the solicitation, they are required to have a small business, and they can go online and find any small business, but it's not even guaranteed that they're going to use them. So it's very important that you, as buyers, you know, use the tools that we have, you know, using the cuff. And that's why. And when you use a cuff on every contract, on every one of them. Okay? Yes. So I had to mute Joseph. And if you have any questions about that, please feel free to ask us. Okay? But with the cuff, it performed. You want to make sure that the companies perform the work that is normal for the business services and function. Go ahead, Melinda, chime in.
Okay, so we know what it is, right? We know what it stands for, and thank you, William, for putting what the acronym stands for in the chat. Why you do it? Now, when do you do it? Now, commercially useful function is always done with competitive solicitations, right? We do it whenever we are evaluating for an award, whenever there is a small business or a DVBE that's a prime supplier or a subcontractor. So you may have a solicitation out for bid, you get your bid responses back, and now you're going to evaluate. Let's say you have 4 bid responses. You may have one supplier that's a small business that's going to do all the work. That's one evaluation. You may have another supplier that's a prime large business and they have 3 DVBE subcontractors. That means you're going to do 3 cuff evaluations for that supplier response, right? And so on down the line. So you may have upwards of 4 to maybe possibly 12 or 15, depending on how many subcontractors there are. So just know that you do a fresh cuff evaluation whenever you're doing a competitive solicitation. You must have a bidder's declaration in order to proceed.
Well, that's exactly right. Thank you, Melinda. And so, how or who? Did we say who yet, Melinda or Lori,
No, we didn't say who
Joseph?
does it yet.
Yeah.
Who does the cuff evaluation?
Who does the cuff evaluation? Right in the chat. Who does it? And this is very important. Exactly. You guys got it. Every time the buyers, whenever you do any type of solicitation, any purchases, or any type of procurement, you want to do a cuff. And I'm talking to all the buyers, contract analysts
Well,
for
Rich, it's
everything.
funny. It's funny because everybody in the chat says buyers or contract analysts, which technically is like the buyer role, right? But
Exactly.
I didn't see anybody put contract manager. Remember, commercially useful
Hmm.
function evaluation is like a living evaluation. You do it before the contract award, and that's typically the buyer, the contract analyst. Then it's also evaluated during the life of the contract. So that's when the contract manager will be evaluating the performance of that cuff compliant supplier or suppliers. And then it's also done it's also done after the contract is ended. So it's like your
That's right.
wrap up documentation. You do a final cuff evaluation for the whole contract. So it was the same players all the way through doing the things that they were spec to do on that bidder declaration.
That's right.
So it's the
It's just,
buyer, the contract
yes.
analyst, and the contract manager that actually performs the cuff evaluations. You know who
And the
doesn't do
contract,
cuff evaluations? Rich. Let's
go
ask
ahead.
it in the chat. Who doesn't perform cuff evaluations? Everybody but us, right? So I always like to ask this question because the Office of Small Business Disabled Veterans Business Enterprises, which is OSDS through DGS, they will not perform your cuff evaluation for you. You can contact them with questions and they will go over the 5 criteria. They'll give you some explanation, but they will not help you um, uh, document your file for a yes or a no. That's strictly up to you at your agency to do that justification. They will not be saying yes or no to you. So the buyer, the contract manager. Go ahead, Rich.
And yes. And it's just like I said, a contract manager, because it's like you're doing an investigation. You're making sure that everything is done correctly. That's why it goes through so many eyes. You want to investigate, make sure that the small business or DVBE that was actually put on that contract as a sub is actually being used. And I have experienced that situation before, where a small business, they claimed a small business that they were using the small business, but when I called the small business to check on it, they were surprised. And like, oh, for real? No, so it is very important that contract manager do the investigation. All right. And the buyers, yes, you are the one that actually starts it from the beginning. All right.
Correct. So I do see that in the chat, and I know Laura has answered in the chat as well about the suppliers, basically what we've heard the term as self-certifying themselves as CUF compliant. I do see that as a time saver, but I also see that as a hindrance if I were to put on my auditor cap, which I love to do. If I looked at your file and I seen that you allowed for a supplier to self-certify themselves and you didn't check what they documented, then that's an automatic. Let's look into this a little further. So yes, if you have a supplier respond with what they feel is the answers to each of the 5 criteria of CUF individually, not all one answer together, but an answer for each individual criteria, you have to verify their information, right? As much as we love to say we'll just take their word for it, we need some documentation from the evaluating agency that you verified their information to be true and accurate based off what the need or the requirements are of the contract that you are, or the solicitation resulting into a contract that you're evaluating. So we want to make sure that you're doing your part and not just having them do your work, because when a contract manager gets a hold of it, if they have a subcontractor listed that's ABC Supply, but then XYZ Supply shows up, then the contract manager is going to be like, wait a minute, hold on. Wait, I thought this was checked, right? And this is where they can step in and find and put what we call proofs in the pudding. Okay, so you don't want to have to go through that. So you definitely have to verify whatever it is that the suppliers are sending it to you, if that's something that you do. Not a lot of agencies do that. I personally don't recommend that, but it is what it is. It's your policy. It's your contracts at the end of the day. Sorry, Rich. Go ahead.
Oh, no, no problem. I was just reading one of the questions from JC. He said, when we are dealing with a software and go through a reseller, how can we say that they are CUF compliant and not
Uh,
pass through?
well, my
Mm.
question is, when you're talking about software and resellers, are you using the leverage procurement agreements? Are you using the software licensing program?
You have to.
Right? A lot of those are mandatory. When it comes to using LPAs and the software licensing program, those are negotiated, and some of the administrative function may have been done for you, but you actually will still do, if you're getting resellers that are small businesses, you still have to do a CUF compliancy on them, even though you're probably like, oh, they're fine. This is the software we need. We find a small business reseller. I don't have to certify them because they're 100% small business and they're providing the product. No, that's not the case. You still have to do a CUF evaluation. Matter of fact, I'm glad you asked that question too, because I'm going to bleed off into something else. When we're doing the SB or DVBE option, where you only go to smalls or only go to DVEs, you still have to perform a CUF evaluation for those responses when they send their bids in. A lot of people think, oh, I'm going strictly out for smalls. I don't have to do any CUF compliancy because they're already certified, right? Certification doesn't equal CUF compliancy. You still have to do a CUF evaluation for those suppliers. Okay. So how is it done? There is a CUF uh, evaluation, like a documentation worksheet that you can find through DGS. It is a template and it's a form that you can use. It's not mandatory at all. Most agencies have developed something for the purpose of documenting your cuff evaluations. A lot of times I see people just opening up Word documents and just putting cuff evaluation, just start typing away their findings. There also is a section in the procurement summary or some form like that that must be in your files for goods and IT. You can do a cuff evaluation summary format, like uh, summary format with freehand typing in that particular document. So there are multiple ways that you can do a cuff evaluation. And like I said, push come to shove, you can open up a blank Word document, type out who you evaluated, what supplier they belong to, what bid response, and then just document away. Lori, Rich, you have anything else to add to that?
You said it pretty clearly.
Awesome. Yeah, if you have any questions, please, or if you want to share, if you're an agency that has a template, that's awesome. I know most templates, when they're agency created, they don't like to share them, but it's 5 criteria. It can't get any more difficult than just, is it yes or no, and why is it yes or no. But the one thing about the 5 criteria is that they have to pass all 5 in order to be compliant. And that's whether you're doing it before award, during award, or after contract end. They have to pass all 5 criteria. There's no passing a little bit. There's no, oh, 1 out of 5, that's good. No, it has to be passing all 5. If there's one no, that's grounds for, non-justification for cuff, and that could possibly reject that supplier if you're doing it before evaluation. A lot of that depends on whether or not they have a DVBE or are a DVBE when it comes to participation that's required, right? So you want to make sure you're aware of that, because that could knock them out, because that would make them non-compliant to that DVBE participation. Okay, anything else?
So do anyone else have any questions?
Yeah, there was a question about NCB on there. Where is it? What time was that asked? So you can bring it up to there at 2:19. Or no, someone asked about NCBs and cuff.
Okay, okay, I see someone. Let me go ahead and address the reseller question again. So actually, yes, they still can do a cuff evaluation even if they're resellers. You're still just going to go through the 5 criteria. Now, right off the bat, they may be automatic yeses all the way through and easy peasy. You don't have to really justify it. It just totally matches. Yes, they're performing an element of the work because they're giving us the software. Yes, they're going to be providing it. Yes, they're going to be overseeing it. No, right? I mean, I'm sorry. Yes, they're going to be Yes, they're going to have everything they need to provide this software to us. So it could be yes is real easy. It could take you a matter of 30 seconds to fill out the form, right? But you still have to do a cuff evaluation if you're going to get your product from a small business or a DBB. Okay, sorry, Lori. What was the? Oh,
There was
that's
a
live,
question.
folks.
There was a question about NCB and cuff, because obviously if it's an NCB, there's only one vendor who can provide the good or service.
Yeah, I don't see that question. So if you can read when you find it, that's cool. Otherwise, right off the
Yeah.
bat, if you're doing a non-competitively bid, which is an NCB, then you already know the supplier that you want to get the product or service from, right? That's the whole point of NCB. There's no other supplier that compares. There's no one else to get a bid from. It's the only supplier that can provide that product or service based off your requirements, right? If you know it's a small business and it's a DVBE that you're going to award to, you're still going to want to have some cuff evaluation in there. It's part of the process, right? Because I know we said everything is competitive, right? Cuff really goes with competition, bidder declarations, cuff, preferences, incentives, things like that. But when it comes to an NCB, even though this is the only supplier that you're going to go with, you still want to make sure that they're cuff compliant just for good measure in case someone wants to, well, you can't really like protest that, but you know what I mean. I think you still need a level of that, unless otherwise stated. Let's just leave it at that.
All right. Now, I know not all of you were in the meeting earlier, in the class earlier, but let's pretend we got a bidder declaration and the prime is a large business and we've got 4 small businesses. How many CUF evaluations do you need to do? 4. Good. Ding, ding, ding. All right. The
Absolutely right.
prime is a small business and the 4 subs are small businesses. How many CUF evaluations do you need to do? All right. You use that same prime and those same 4 subs are listed on another bidder declaration. How many CUF evaluations do you need to do? Well, you got slow on that answer. Same prime, same subcontractors, but a different contract. How many CUF evaluations do you have to do? 5, right? It's going to be easier the second time, most likely, but you still have to do the CUF evaluations. You still have to have it documented in your file that you did this. Excellent. All right,
Look,
turn it back over.
yeah, looked like everybody was in class today. Was everybody in this class today? Our cuff class. Everyone just getting all the answers.
There was a question in the chat. I was able to snatch it real quick. Is it possible to talk about when a prime supplier is a small business and they're only performing a small percentage of the contract and the main portion is subcontracted to a large business? So that's kind of the flip, right? Typically, we always see that there's a large prime supplier and then they use a small business. And sometimes the small business seems to be doing more than the large. Um, but in this case, it's flip. We're saying that the small business is barely doing anything as a prime. Most of the work is being done by the large business. A lot of those situations where the percentages is off, like let's say that large business subcontractor was doing 60% of the work, that's kind of in my eyes, that seems to be a large percentage, right? That's more than half. I always go directly to industry standard. You know, what is the role of the prime? Because if you were to look at the bidder declaration, and I'm sorry I don't have one to put up, and I know Lori just talked about it, but if you look at the bidder declaration, at the top, it asks who the prime supplier is and what are you doing, right? So it doesn't let the prime supplier off the hook. They still have to put their technically element of work in there as well, right? So we want to know what you're doing. Are you maybe project management? Are you oversight? Are you putting things together? Are you the control of the contract? Then that may be what happens. You know, is it normal industry standard to handle it in that way? You'll have to ask that question and do that during your evaluation to find that out. So sometimes there's no set percentage that says that's too much for a subcontractor to do. But right off the top, just by looking at the number, it's a red flag for you, right? You're like, wow, that's a lot. You know, why are they doing, you know, more than half the work? You know, does that constitute a pass through or a front, you know, for that small business prime? So it does happen, and a majority of the time, it's usually good. But you have to look at what they actually are performing in the contract, what the subcontractor's doing, and is that normal industry practice? Those are the 3 things I usually go for when I see something like that, an imbalance in um, uh, work duty, percentage wise. Go ahead. Oh, it's 2:26. Go ahead and see if there's any more questions.
Can I just butt in? Someone earlier asked about how to get a hold of the evaluation and determination worksheet. And that's not something we usually provide in the forum, but this time I went ahead and put it in that content tab. So if you want to just click on the other tab to get to that form, you can get it and download it and use it. Okay, thank you. Bye.
Now I see DJ, how do we generate the percentage amount requirement for a solicitation? I'm going to ask you to clarify that. Are you talking about the like DVBE requirement? Like how do we determine that it's 3% in our solicitations, or how do we determine 2% if needed? Okay, so the percentage that you are going to be requiring, now this is off cuff topic, but I'm going to address it really quick, right? So the percentage that you are going to be putting in your solicitations that the suppliers need to respond to in regards to DVBE incentive, right? will be determined by you at your agency with the help of your SBDVBE advocate. So we know that 3% of our agency's annual contracting dollars must be spent with DVBEs. So in that case, you go to your advocate and say, okay, I'm getting ready to do this contract. You know, it's like going to be $400,000. You know, I need some participation in here. It's a large dollar amount, meaning where are we at in our DVBE numbers? Your advocate can say, well, you know, we're at 1% right now. You know, maybe we should go for the maximum at 3%, because what are the odds that we can get 3% participation from DVBEs? What is this contract for? Is it something that a lot of DVBEs can do in any capacity, whether it's one requirement or, you know, a majority of the work, or maybe they could do, you know, as in a prime supplier being a responder? Or is it something that there's hardly any DVBEs out there? You know, you do that research with your advocate and there's like hardly any DVBEs in that field. There's, you know, hardly anything listed in the certification database for a DVBE. Chances are that you're not going to get 3% participation. So you can look at the DVBE participation requirement language, and you have an option to make it just that, an option, right? Suppliers, you have the option to provide us with DVBE participation, and you tell us the amount of percentage that you're going to pay that supplier. We'll verify it during evaluation, and if it shows to be true, then we'll give you that percentage amount moving forward into the actual dollar amount calculation. Okay, so when it comes to the DVBE participation program, it's either a required amount that you know you can get in response, or if you don't think you can get that required amount, it's an option. So I think we'll make that a class in the future to talk about the DVBE program requirements, just the program itself, okay?
All right. Oops, the page went away there. We only have a couple minutes and we need to be cognizant of your time here. If you have additional questions, you can send those to CalPCA online at dgs.ca.gov. Depending on whether it's policy or not, we might forward or have you forward the question for clarification in writing to pams at dgs.ca.gov. Here's a little bit about the upcoming events. On 2/16, we're going to start with we're going to be going over the classification types. There are, for 2/16, we're going to talk about non-IT goods. On 2/22, some of you asked questions about NCB, which is the non-competitively bid. We have an NCB webinar. 3/2, we'll be looking at non-IT services classification types. And on 3/16, IT classification types. And then we have our contract management class on 3/22/23. So please go ahead and sign up. We'll continue to stay on the line and answer some questions, but we know we only listed this for 30 minutes, so we don't want to go over your time. At the same time, we love to get your questions and answers, so we can be sure to include those as well. So thanks for being here. Tell your friends. Remember, CalPCA classes are free. Go out to our website, CalPCA, our homepage, and we are going to be adding some classes. We're looking at eventually adding approaches and methods, SB, DVBE option, IT, and so on as we move forward. So come back often and check us out. Thanks, everyone. And we'll remain on the line for a few seconds if you like.
Yeah, bye everyone. Thank you for coming. And real quick, if you're still here about the software, there are a lot of large software companies that don't sell directly. You have to go through a reseller. And we would rather you go through a small business reseller than any other if you can. Also, remember there's a software licensing program, SLP, which are leverage procurement agreement contracts, already out there ready for you to use. See if they have what you need through an LPA and you don't have to worry about that. So there's options for you. Give us an email if you have any further questions. Have a great afternoon. Bye, y'all.
Take care, everybody. Thanks for coming, and we're looking forward to seeing you again.
The reseller being cuff compliant, like I said, it's good measure to do that. but you also want to make sure that that's not industry standard, right? There are a lot of reasons why it happens that way. So yes, you may see that, oh, they're not cuff compliant because from the outset you're like, they're not actually selling it to us, right? They're the reseller that's coming from the main company. But that's industry practice. So sometimes that's your reasoning for going with the small business. There's no other way to do it.
I just wanted to tell Mark that you can find that cuff form on the other tab, not in this webinar room itself. You got to go up to the tab at the left top corner of your screen, click on that tab and go into the menu that has the form. It's right in the menu. I also wanted to say thanks for your email earlier today, Mark. That really was helpful to me. Thank you.
I see that message from Christy to you, Joseph.
Yes. Hi, Christy. The way to get your cuff certificate is by going into your dashboard. In the panel on the right-hand side, completed courses, you will find the title of the course. You click on that and a little pop-up opens that gives you a choice of downloading your certificate or going back into the class. Of course, you select the download my certificate and it appears in the bottom left corner of your screen. You click on that, or you can even just drag that rectangle at the bottom left corner of your screen onto your computer screen, onto your desktop. Okay. You can also find that in your download folder in your MS Office download folder. Okay. Good luck.
Yes, JC, it will be on YouTube. Give us a couple of days and just look up Kyle PCA on YouTube and you will see this Fiduciary Forum episode 3.
Yeah, I just put the link to our YouTube channel so you can see the two previous, because this is only our 3rd episode. So if you haven't attended 1 or 2, you can go ahead and listen to those, and this one will be available soon. Okay. Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and turn off the recording now, y'all.